The eighth book of the Odysseys of Homer. The argument. The peers of the Phæacian state a council call, to consolate Ulysses with all means for home. The council to a banquet come, invited by the king; which done, assays for hurling of the stone the youths make with the stranger king. Demodocus at feast doth sing the adult'ry of the gods of arms with her that rules in amorous charms, and after sings the intercourse of acts about the Epeian horse. Another argument. Theta. The council's frame at fleet applied, in strifes of game Ulysses tried. Now when the rosy finger'd morn arose, the sacred pow'r Alcinous did dispose did likewise rise, and like him left his ease the city raiser Laertiades. The council at navy was design'd, to which Alcinous with the sacred mind came first of all. On polish'd stones they sate, near to the navy. To increase the state Minerva took the herald's form on her, and serv'd Alcinous, studious to prefer Ulysses' suit for home. About the town she made quick way, and fill'd with the renown of that design the ears of every man, proclaiming thus: Peers Phæacensian, and men of council, all haste to the court, to hear the stranger that made late resort to King Alcinous, long time lost at sea, and is in person like a deity. This all their pow'rs set up, and spirit instill'd, and straight the court and seats with men were fill'd. The whole state wonder'd at Laertes' son when they beheld him. Pallas put him on a supernatural and heav'nly dress, enlarg'd him with height and goodliness in breast and shoulders, that he might appear gracious and grave and reverend, and bear a perfect hand on his performance there in all the trials they resolv'd t' impose. All met, and gather'd in attention close, Alcinous thus bespake them: Dukes and lords, hear me digest my hearty thoughts in words. This stranger here, whose travels found my court, I know not, nor can tell if his resort From east or west comes; but his suit is this: That to his country earth we would dismiss His hither forced person, and doth bear The mind to pass it under ev'ry peer, Whom I prepare and stir up, making known My free desire of his deduction. Nor shall there ever any other man, That tries the goodness Phæacensian In me, and my court's entertainment, stay, Mourning for passage, under least delay. Come then, a ship into the sacred seas, New built, now launch we, and from out our prease Choose 52 youths, of all the best, To use an oar; all which see straight imprest, And in their oar bound seats. Let others hie home to our court, commanding instantly The solemn preparation of a feast, In which provision may for any guest Be made at my charge. Charge of these low things I give our youth. You, sceptre bearing kings, consort me home, And help with grace to use this guest of ours, No man shall refuse. Some other of you haste, and call to us The sacred singer, grave Demodocus, To whom hath God giv'n song that can excite The heart of whom he listeth with delight. This said, he led. The sceptre bearers lent Their free attendance, and with all speed went The herald for the sacred man in song. Youths 52, chosen from the throng, Went, as was will'd, to the untam'd sea's shore, Where come, they launch'd the ship; the mast it bore Advanc'd, sails hois'd, ev'ry seat his oar Gave with a leather thong. The deep moist then they further reach'd. The dry streets flow'd with men, that troop'd up To the king's capacious court, Whose porticos were chok'd with the resort, Whose walls were hung with men, young, old, thrust there In mighty concourse; for whose promis'd cheer Alcinous slew 12 sheep, 8 white tooth'd swine, 2 crooked haunch'd beeves, which flay'd and drest. Divine the show was of so many a jocund guest, All set together at so set a feast; To whose accomplish'd state the herald then The lovely singer led, who past all men The Muse affected, gave him good and ill, His eyes put out, but put in soul at will. His place was giv'n him in a chair all grac'd With silver studs, and 'gainst a pillar plac'd. Where as the centre to the state, he rests, and round about the circle of the guests. The herald on a pin above his head his soundful harp hung, to whose height he led his hand for taking of it down at will. A board set by with food, and forth did fill a bowl of wine, to drink at his desire. The rest then fell to feast, and when the fire of appetite was quench'd, the Muse inflam'd the sacred singer. Of men highliest fam'd he sung the glories, and a poem penn'd that in applause did ample heav'n ascend, whose subject was the stern contention betwixt Ulysses and great Thetis' son. As at a banquet sacred to the Gods, in dreadful language they express their odds, when Agamemnon sat rejoic'd in soul to hear the Greek peers jar in terms so foul. For augur Phœbus in presage had told the king of men, desirous to unfold the war's perplexéd end, and being therefore gone in heav'nly Phthia to the porch of stone, that then the end of all griefs should begin 'twixt Greece and Troy, when Greece, with strife to win that wish'd conclusion, in her kings should jar, and plead, if force or wit must end the war. This brave contention did the poet sing, expressing so the spleen of either king, that his large purple weed Ulysses held before his face and eyes, since thence distill'd tears uncontain'd, which he obscur'd, in fear to let the observing presence note a tear. But when his sacred song the mere divine had giv'n an end, a goblet crown'd with wine Ulysses, drying his wet eyes, did seize, and sacrifice to those Gods that would please to inspire the poet with a song so fit to do him honour, and renown his wit. His tears then stay'd, but when again began, by all the king's desires, the moving man, again Ulysses could not choose but yield to that soft passion, which again, withheld, he kept so cunningly from sight, that none except Alcinous himself alone discern'd him move so much. But he sat next, and heard him deeply sigh, which his pretext could not keep hid from him. Yet he conceal'd his utterance of it, and would have it held from all the rest, brake off the song, and this said to those o'er‐affecting peers of his: "Princes and peers, we now are satiate with sacred song that fits a feast of state, with wine and food. Now then to field, and try in all kinds our approv'd activity, that this our guest may give his friends to know, in his return, that we as little owe to fights and wrastlings, leaping, speed of race, as these our court rites, and commend our grace in all to all superior." Forth he led. The peers and people troop'd up to their head, nor must Demodocus be left within, whose harp the herald hung upon the pin. His hand in his took, and abroad he brought the heav'nly poet, out the same way wrought that did the princes, and what they would see with admiration, with his company they wish'd to honour. To the place of game these throng'd, and after routs of other came, of all sort infinite. Of youths that strove, many and strong rose to their trials' love. Up rose Acroneus, and Ocyalus, Elatreus, Prymneus, and Oncyalus, Nauteus, Eretmeus, Thone, Proreus, Pontius, and strong Amphialus, son to Tectonides Polyneus. Up rose to these the great Euryalus, in action like the homicide of war, Naubolides, that was for person far past all the rest, but one he could not pass, nor any thought improve, Laodamas. Up Anabasinus then arose, and 3 sons of the sceptre state, and those were Halius, the fore‐praised Laodamas, and Clytonëus like a God in grace. These first the foot game tried, and from the lists took start together. Up the dust in mist they hurled about, as in their speed they flew. But Clytonëus, first of all the crew, a stitch's length in any fallow field made good his pace, when, where the judges yield the prize and praise, his glorious speed arrived. Next, for the boist'rous wrastling game they strived, at which Euryalus the rest outshone. At leap Amphialus, at the hollow stone Elatreus excell'd, at buffets, last, Laodamas, the king's fair son, surpass'd. When all had strived in these essays their fill, Laodamas said: "Come, friends, let's prove what skill this stranger hath attain'd to in our sport." Methinks he must be of an active sort. His calves, thighs, hands, and well knit shoulders show That nature disposition did bestow To fit with fact their form. Nor wants he prime But sour affliction, made a mate with time, Makes time the more seen. Nor imagine I A worse thing to enforce debility Than is the sea, though nature ne'er so strong Knits one together. Nor conceive you wrong, Replied Euryalus, but prove his blood With what you question. In the midst then stood Renown'd Laodamas, and prov'd him thus: "Come, stranger father, and assay with us Your pow'rs in these contentions. If your show Be answer'd with your worth, 'tis fit that you Should know these conflicts. Nor doth glory stand On any worth more, in a man's command, Than to be strenuous both of foot and hand. Come then, make proof with us, discharge your mind Of discontentments; for not far behind Comes your deduction, ship is ready now, And men, and all things." "Why," said he, "Dost thou mock me, Laodamas, and these strifes bind My pow'rs to answer? I am more inclin'd To cares than conflict. Much sustain'd I have, And still am suffering. I come here to crave In your assemblies means to be dismiss'd, And pray both kings and subjects to assist." Euryalus an open brawl began, And said: "I take you, sir, for no such man As fits these honour'd strifes. A number more Strange men there are that I would choose before. To one that loves to lie a ship board much, Or is the prince of sailors; or to such As traffic far and near, and nothing mind But freight and passage, and a foreright wind; Or to a victualler of a ship, or men That set up all their pow'rs for rampant gain, I can compare, or hold you like to be. But for a wrastler, or of quality Fit for contentions noble, you abhor From worth of any such competitor." Ulysses frowning answer'd: "Stranger, far Thy words are from the fashions regular Of kind or honour. Thou art in thy guise Like to a man that authors injuries. I see, the Gods to all men give not all Manly addiction, wisdom, words that fall Like dice upon the square still. Some man takes ill form from parents, but God often makes That fault of form up, with observ'd repair Of pleasing speech, that makes him held for fair, That makes him speak securely, makes him shine In an assembly with a grace divine. Men take delight to see how evenly lie His words asteep in honey modesty. Another then hath fashion like a God, But in his language he is foul and broad, And such art thou. A person fair is given, But nothing else is in thee sent from heaven. For in thee lurks a base and earthy soul, And th' hast compell'd me with a speech most foul To be thus bitter. I am not unseen In these fair strifes, as thy words overween, But in the first rank of the best I stand. At least I did, when youth and strength of hand Made me thus confident. But now am worn With woes and labours, as a human born To bear all anguish. Suffer'd much I have. The war of men, and th' inhuman wave, Have I driven through at all parts. But with all my waste in suff'rance, what yet may fall In my performance, at these strifes I'll try. Thy speech hath mov'd, and made my wrath run high." This said, with robe and all he grasp'd a stone, A little graver than was ever thrown By these Phæacians in their wrastling rout, More firm, more massy; which turn'd round about He hurried from him with a hand so strong It sung and flew, and over all the throng That at the other's mark stood, quite it went; Yet down fell all beneath it, fearing spent The force that drave it flying from his hand, As it a dart were, or a walking wand; And far past all the marks of all the rest His wing stole way. When Pallas straight impress'd A mark at fall of it, resembling then One of the navy giv'n Phæacian men, And thus advanc'd Ulysses: "One, though blind, O stranger, groping may thy stone's fall find; For nought admits the rout of all marks it fell, But far before all. Of thy worth think well, And stand in all strifes. No Phæacian here This bound can either better or come near." Ulysses joy'd to hear that one man yet Us'd him benignly, and would truth abet in those contentions, and then thus smooth he took his speech down: "Reach me that now, youth, you shall, and straight, I think, have one such more, and one beyond it too. And now, whose core stands sound and great within him, since ye have thus put my spleen up, come again, and brave the guest ye tempted with such gross disgrace, at wrastling, buffets, whirlbat, speed, or race, at all or either, I accept at none, but urge the whole state of you. Only one I will not challenge in my forced boast, and that's Laodamas, for he's mine host, and who will fight, or wrangle with his friend? Unwise he is, and base, and will contend with him that feeds him in a foreign place, and takes all edge off from his own sought grace. None else accept I here, nor none despise, but wish to know and prove his faculties that dares appear now. No strife ye can name am I unskill'd in, reckon any game of all that are, as many as there are in use with men. For archery I dare affirm myself not mean. Of all a troop I'll make the first foe with mine arrows stoop. Though with me ne'er so many fellows bend their bows at mark'd men, and effect their end. Only was Philoctetes with his bow still my superior, when we Greeks would show our archery against our foes of Troy. But all, that now by bread, frail life, and joy, I far hold my inferiors. Men of old, none now alive shall witness me so bold, to vaunt equality with such men as these, Ecalian Eurytus, Hercules, who with their bows durst with the Gods contend, and therefore caught Eurytus soon his end, nor died at home, in age a reverend man, but by the great incensed Delphian was shot to death, for daring competence with him in all an archer's excellence. A spear I'll hurl as far as any man shall shoot a shaft. How at a race I can bestir my feet, I only yield to fear, and doubt to meet with my superior here. So many seas so too much have misus'd my limbs for race, and therefore have diffus'd a dissolution through my lovéd knees." This said, he still'd all talking properties. Alcinous only answer'd: "O my guest, in good part take we what you have been press'd with speech to answer. You would make appear your virtues therefore, that will still shine where your only look is. Yet must this man give your worth ill language, when he does not live in sort of mortals, whencesoe'er he springs, that judgment hath to speak becoming things, that will deprave your virtues. Note then now my speech, and what my love presents to you, that you may tell heroes, when you come to banquet with your wife, and birth at home, mindful of our worth, what deservings Jove hath put on our parts likewise, in remove from sire to son, as an inherent grace kind and perpetual. We must needs give place to other countrymen, and freely yield we are not blameless in our fights of field, buffets, nor wrastlings, but in speed of feet, and all the equipage that fits a fleet, we boast us best. For tables ever spread with neighbour feasts, for garments varied, for poesy, music, dancing, baths, and beds. And now, Phæacians, you that bear your heads and feet with best grace in enamouring dance, enflame our guest here, that he may advance our worth past all the worlds to his home friends, as well for the unmatch'd grace that commends. Your skill in footing of a dance, as theirs that fly a race best. And so, all affairs at which we boast us best, he best may try, as sea race, land race, dance, and poesy. Some one with instant speed to court retire, and fetch Demodocus' soundful lyre." This said the God grac'd king, and quick resort Pontonous made for that fair harp to court. 9 of the lot choos'd public rulers rose, that all in those contentions did dispose, commanding a most smooth ground, and a wide, and all the people in fair game aside. Then with the rich harp came Pontonous, and in the midst took place Demodocus. About him then stood forth the choice young men, that on man's first youth made fresh entry then, had art to make their natural motions sweet, and shook a most divine dance from their feet, that twinkled star like, mov'd as swift and fine, and beat the air so thin they made it shine. Ulysses wonder'd at it, but amaz'd He stood in mind to hear the dance so phras'd. For, as they danc'd, Demodocus did sing The bright crown'd Venus' love with battle's king, As first they closely mix'd in the house of fire. What worlds of gifts won her to his desire, Who then the night and day bed did defile Of good King Vulcan. But in little while The sun their mixture saw, and came and told. The bitter news did by his ears take hold Of Vulcan's heart. Then to his forge he went, And in his shrewd mind deep stuff did invent. His mighty anvil in the stock he put, And forg'd a net that none could loose or cut, That when it had them it might hold them fast. Which having finish'd, he made utmost haste Up to the dear room where his wife he woo'd. And, madly wrath with Mars, he all bestow'd The bed and bed posts, all the beam above That cross'd the chamber, and a circle strove Of his device to wrap in all the room. And 'twas as pure, as of a spider's loom The woof before 'tis woven. No man nor God Could set his eye on it, a sleight so odd His art show'd in it. All his craft bespent About the bed, he feign'd as if he went To well built Lemnos, his most lovéd town Of all the towns earthly, nor left this Unknown to golden bridled using Mars, Who kept no blind watch over him, but, seeing stepp'd His rival so aside, he hasted home With fair wreath'd Venus' love stung, who was come New from the court of her most mighty sire. Mars enter'd, wrung her hand, and the retire Her husband made to Lemnos told, and said: "Now, love, is Vulcan gone, let us to bed, He's for the barbarous Sintians." Well apaid was Venus with it, and afresh assay'd Their old encounter. Down they went, and straight About them cling'd the artificial sleight Of most wise Vulcan, and were so ensnar'd That neither they could stir their course prepar'd In any limb about them, nor arise. And then they knew they would no more disguise Their close conveyance, but lay, forc'd, stone still. Back rush'd the both foot cook'd, but straight in skill From his near scout hole turn'd, nor ever went To any Lemnos, but the sure event Left Phœbus to discover, who told all. Then home hopp'd Vulcan, full of grief and gall, Stood in the portal, and cried out so high That all the Gods heard: "Father of the sky, And every other deathless God," said he, "Come all, and a ridiculous object see, And yet not sufferable neither. Come, and witness how, when still I step from home, Lame that I am, Jove's daughter doth profess To do me all the shameful offices, Indignities, despites, that can be thought, And loves this all things making come to nought, Since he is fair forsooth, foot sound, and I Took in my brain a little legg'd awry. And no fault mine, but all my parents' fault, Who should not get, if mock me, with my halt. But see how fast they sleep, while I, in moan, Am only made an idle looker on. One bed their turn serves, and it must be mine. I think yet I have made their self love shine. They shall no more wrong me, and none perceive, Nor will they sleep together, I believe, With too hot haste again. Thus both shall lie in craft and force, till the extremity Of all the dower I gave her sire, to gain A dogged set fac'd girl, that will not stain Her face with blushing, though she shame her head, He pays me back. She's fair, but was no maid." While this long speech was making, all were come To Vulcan's holy brazen founded home, Earth shaking Neptune, useful Mercury, And far shot Phœbus. No she deity, for shame, would show there. All the give good Gods stood in the portal, And past periods gave length to laughters, all rejoic'd to see That which they said, that no impiety Finds good success at the end. And now, said one, the slow outgoes the swift. Lame Vulcan, known to be the slowest of the Gods, Outgoes Mars the most swift. And this is that which grows to greatest justice, That adultery's sport, obtain'd by craft of other sort, And lame craft too is plagued, which grieves the more That sound limbs turning lame the lame restore. This speech amongst themselves they entertain'd, when Phœbus thus ask'd Hermes: "Thus enchain'd wouldst thou be, Hermes, to be thus disclos'd, Though with thee golden Venus were repos'd?" He soon gave an answer: "O," said he, "Thou king of archers, would 'twere thus with me, Though thrice so much shame, nay, though infinite Were pour'd about me, that ev'ry light In great heav'n shining witness'd all my harms, So golden Venus slumber'd in mine arms." The Gods again laugh'd; ev'n the wat'ry state Rung out a laughter; but propitiate Was still for Mars, and pray'd the God of Fire He would dissolve him, offering the desire He made to Jove to pay himself, and said, All due debts should be by the Gods repaid. "Pay me no words," said he, "where deeds lend pain; Wretched the words are giv'n for wretched men. Now shall I bind you in th' Immortals' sight, If Mars be once loos'd, nor will pay his right." "Vulcan," said he, "if Mars should fly, nor see Thy right repaid, it should be paid by me." "Your word so giv'n I must accept," said he; which said, he loos'd them. Mars then rush'd from sky, and stoop'd cold Thrace. The laughing Deity for Cyprus was, And took her Paphian state, Where she a grove ne'er cut had consecrate, All with Arabian odours fum'd, and hath An altar there, at which the Graces bathe, And with immortal balms besmooth her skin, Fit for the bliss Immortals solace in; Deck'd her in to be studied attire, And apt to set beholders' hearts on fire. This sung the sacred Muse, whose notes and words The dancer's feet kept, as his hands his chords. Ulysses much was pleas'd, and all the crew. This would the king have varied with a new And pleasing measure, and performéd By two, with whom none would strive in dancery; And those his sons were, that must therefore dance Alone, and only to the harp advance, Without the words. And this sweet couple was Young Halius, and divine Laodamas, Who danc'd a ball dance. Then the rich wrought ball, That Polybus had made, of purple all They took to hand. One threw it to the sky, And then danc'd back; the other, capering high, Would surely catch it ere his foot touch'd ground, And up again advanc'd it, and so found The other cause of dance. And then did he Dance lofty tricks, till next it came to be His turn to catch, and serve the other still. When they had kept it up to either's will, They then danc'd ground tricks, oft mix'd hand in hand, And did so gracefully their change command, That all the other youths that stood at pause, With deafening shouts gave them the great applause. Then said Ulysses: "O past all men here Clear, not in pow'r, but in desert as clear, You said your dancers did the world surpass, And they perform it clear, and to amaze." This won Alcinous' heart; and equal prize He gave Ulysses, saying: "Matchless wise Princes and rulers, I perceive our guest, And therefore let our hospitable best In fitting gifts be giv'n him. 12 chief kings There are that order all the glorious things Of this our kingdom, and the 13th I exist as crown to all. Let instantly be 13 garments giv'n him, And of gold precious and fine a talent. While we hold this our assembly, be all Fetch'd and giv'n, that to our feast prepar'd, As to his heav'n, our guest may enter. And, that nothing be left unperform'd That fits his dignity, Euryalus shall here conciliate Himself with words and gifts, since past our rate He gave bad language." This did all commend, and give in charge, And ev'ry king did send his herald for his gift. Euryalus, answering for his part, said: "Alcinous, our chief of all, since you command, I will to this our guest by all means reconcile, And give him this entirely metall'd sword, The handle massy silver, and the board That gives it cover all of ivory, New, and in all kinds worth his quality." This put he straight into his hand, and said: "Frolic, O guest and father! If words fled have been offensive, let swift Whirlwinds take and ravish them from thought. May all Gods make thy wife's sight good to thee, In quick retreat to all thy friends, and best Lov'd breeding seat, their long miss quitting With the greater joy, in whose sweet vanish All thy worst annoy." "And frolic thou to all height, friend," said he, which heav'n confirm with wish'd felicity, nor ever give again desire to thee of this sword's use, which with effect so free In my reclaim thou hast bestow'd on me." This said, athwart his shoulders he put on The right fair sword, and then did set the sun. When all the gifts were brought, which back again, With King Alcinous and all the train, Were by the honour'd heralds borne to court, Which his fair sons took, and from the resort Laid by their rev'rend mother, each his throne Of all the peers, which yet were overshone In King Alcinous' command, ascended, Whom he to pass as much in gifts contended, And to his queen said: "Wife, see brought me here The fairest cabinet I have, and there Impose a well cleans'd inn, and utter weed, A caldron heat with water, that with speed Our guest well bath'd, and all his gifts be made sure, It may a joyful appetite procure To his succeeding feast, and make him hear The poet's hymn with the securer ear. To all which I will add my bowl of gold, In all fram'd curious, to make him hold My memory always dear, and sacrifice With it at home to all the Deities." Then Arete her maids charg'd to set on A well siz'd caldron quickly; which was done, Clear water pour'd in, flame made so entire It gilt the brass, and made the water fire. In mean space from her chamber brought the queen A wealthy cabinet, where, pure and clean, She put the garments, and the gold bestow'd By that free state, and then the other vow'd By her Alcinous, and said: "Now, guest, Make close and fast your gifts, lest, when you rest A ship board sweetly, in your way you meet Some loss, that less may make your next sleep sweet." This when Ulysses heard, all sure he made, And clos'd and bound safe; for the saving trade The rev'rend for her wisdom Circe had In 4 years taught him. Then the handmaid bad His worth to bathing, which rejoic'd his heart; For, since he did with his Calypso part, He had no hot baths, none had favour'd him, Nor being so tender of his kingly limb. But all the time he spent in her abode He liv'd respected as he were a God. Cleans'd then, and balm'd, fair shirt and robe put on, Fresh come from bath, and to the feasters gone, Nausicaa, that from the Gods' hands took The sov'reign beauty of her blessed look, Stood by a well carv'd column of the room, And through her eye her heart was overcome With admiration of the port impress'd In his aspect, and said: "God save you, guest! Be cheerful, as in all the future state Your home will show you in your better fate. But yet, ev'n then, let this remember'd be, Your life's price I lent, and you owe it me." And varied in all counsels gave reply: "Nausicaa, flow'r of all this empery, So Juno's husband, that the strife for noise Makes in the clouds, bless me with strife of joys, In the desir'd day that my house shall show, As I to a Goddess there shall vow, To thy fair hand that did my being give, Which I'll acknowledge every hour I live." This said, Alcinous plac'd him by his side. Then took they feast, and did in parts divide The sev'ral dishes, fill'd out wine, and then The strive for his worth, of worthy men, And rev'renc'd of state, Demodocus Was brought in by the good Pontonous. In midst of all the guests they gave him place, Against a lofty pillar, when this grace The grac'd with wisdom did him. From the chine That stood before him of a white tooth'd swine, Being far the daintiest joint, mix'd through with fat, He carv'd to him, and sent it where he sat By his old friend the herald, willing thus: "Herald, reach this to grave Demodocus, Say I salute him, and his worth embrace. Poets deserve, past all the human race, Rev'rend respect and honour, since the Queen Of knowledge, and the supreme worth in men, The Muse informs them, and loves all their race." This reach'd the herald to him, who the grace Receiv'd, encourag'd; which, when feast was spent, Ulysses amplified to this assent: "Demodocus, I must prefer you far Past all your sort, if, or the Muse of war, Jove's daughter, prompts you, that the Greeks respects; Or if the sun, that those of Troy affects. For I have heard you, since my coming, sing The fate of Greece to an admiréd string, How much our suff'rance was, how much we wrought, How much the actions rose to when we fought! So lively forming as you have been there, or some free relater lent your ear. Forth then, and sing the wooden horse's frame, Built by Epeus, by the martial dame Taught the whole fabric; which, by force of sleight, Ulysses brought into the city's height, When he had stuff'd it with as many men As levell'd lofty Ilion with the plain. With all which, if you can as well enchant As with expression quick and elegant You sung the rest, I will pronounce you clear Inspir'd by God, past all that ever were." This said, even stirr'd by God up, he began, And to his song fell, past the forms of man, Beginning where the Greeks a ship board went, And ev'ry chief had set on fire his tent. When the other kings, in great Ulysses' guide, In Troy's vast market place the horse did hide, From whence the Trojans up to Ilion drew The dreadful engine, where sat all arew Their kings about it, many counsels giv'n How to dispose it, in three ways were driv'n Their whole distractions. First, if they should feel The hollow wood's heart, searching with piercing steel; Or from the battlements drawn higher yet Deject it headlong; or that counterfeit So vast and novel set on sacred fire, Vow'd to appease each anger'd Godhead's ire. On which opinion they, thereafter, saw They then should have resolv'd, th' unalter'd law Of fate presaging, that Troy then should end, When the hostile horse she should receive to friend; For therein should the Grecian kings lie hid, To bring the fate and death they after did. He sung, besides, the Greeks' eruptión From those their hollow crafts, and horse forgone, And how they made depopulation tread Beneath her feet so high a city's head. In which affair he sung in other place, That of that ambush some man else did race The Ilion tow'rs than Laertiades. But here he sung, that he alone did seize With Menelaus the ascended roof Of Prince Deiphobus, and Mars like proof Made of his valour, a most dreadful fight Daring against him, and there vanquish'd quite, In little time, by great Minerva's aid, All Ilion's remnant, and Troy level laid. This the divine expressor did so give Both act and passion, that he made it live, And to Ulysses' facts did breathe a fire So deadly quickening, that it did inspire Old Death with life, and render'd life so sweet And passionate, that all there felt it fleet; Which made him pity his own cruelty, And put into that ruth so pure an eye Of human frailty, that to see a man Could so revive from death, yet no way can Defend from death, his own quick pow'rs it made Feel their death's horrors, and he felt life fade. In tears his feeling brain sweat; for in things That move past utterance, tears ope all their springs. Nor are there in the pow'rs that all life bears More true interpreters of all than tears. And as a lady mourns her sole lov'd lord, That, fall'n before his city by the sword, Fighting to rescue from a cruel fate His town and children, and in dead estate, Yet panting see him, wraps him in her arms, Weeps, shrieks, and pours her health into his arms, Lies on him, striving to become his shield From foes that still assail him, spears impell'd Through back and shoulders, by whose points embrued They raise and lead him into servitude, Labour, and languor. For all which the dame Eats down her cheeks with tears, and feeds life's flame With miserable suff'rance. So this king Of tears sweat anguish op'd a boundless spring. Nor yet was seen to any one man there But king Alcinous, who sat so near He could not 'scape him, sighs so chok'd so brake From all his tempers; which the king did take Both note and grave respect of, and thus spake: "Hear me, Phæacian counsellors and peers, And cease Demodocus; perhaps all ears Are not delighted with his song; For ever since the divine Muse sung, Our guest hath never contain'd from secret mournings. It may fall, that something sung he hath Been griev'd withal, as touching his particular. Forbear, that feast may jointly comfort All hearts here, and we may cheer our guest up; 'Tis our best in all due honour. For our rev'rend guest is all our celebration, Gifts and all, his love hath added to our festival. A guest and suppliant too we should esteem Dear as our brother, one that doth but dream He hath a soul, or touch but at a mind Deathless and manly should stand so inclin'd. Nor cloak you longer with your curious wit, Lov'd guest, whatever we shall ask of it. It now stands on your honest state to tell, And therefore give your name, no more conceal What of your parents, and the town that bears Name of your native, or of foreigners That near us border, you are call'd in fame. There's no man living walks without a name, Noble or base, but had one from his birth Impos'd as fit as to be born. What earth, people, and city own you, give to know. Tell but our ships all that your way must know. For our ships know th' expressed minds of men, And will so most intentively retain Their scopes appointed, that they never err, And yet use never any man to steer, Nor any rudders have, as others need. They know men's thoughts, and whither tends their speed, And there will set them. For you cannot name A city to them, nor fat soil, that fame Hath any notice given, but well they know, And they will fly to them, though they ebb and flow In blackest clouds and night, and never bear Of any wrack or rock the slenderest fear. But this I heard my sire Nausithous say, Long since, that Neptune, seeing us convey So safely passengers of all degrees, Was angry with us, and upon our seas A well built ship we had, near harbour come From safe deduction of some stranger home, Made in his flitting billows stick stone still, And dimm'd our city like a mighty hill With shade cast round about it. This report The old king made, in which miraculous sort, If God had done such things, or left undone, At his good pleasure be it. But now on, and truth relate us, both whence you err'd, And to what clime of men would be transferr'd, With all their fair towns, be they as they are, If rude, unjust, and all irregular, Or hospitable, bearing minds that please The mighty Deity. Which one of these Would you be set at? Say, and you are there. And therefore what afflicts you? Why, to hear the fate Of Greece and Ilion, mourn you so? The Gods have done it, as to all they do Destine destruction, that from thence may rise A poem to instruct posterities. Fell any kinsman before Ilion? Some worthy sire in law, or like near son, Whom next our blood and self race we love? Or any friend perhaps, in whom did move A knowing soul, and no unpleasing thing? Since such a good one is no underling To any brother; for, what fits true friends, True wisdom is, that blood and birth transcends.